Good morning, it's Kenny Burdine. It's Tuesday, May 26th. I'm recording this around 9 a.m., so markets are just starting to open from the Memorial Day weekend. Going to do two things here quickly this morning. I'm going to review Kentucky cattle markets like I've been doing every couple weeks here lately. And then also I want to take a couple minutes and just talk about what we do know now about the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program and specifically the direct payments coming to cattle producers. First of all, I've actually been pretty impressed with how much slaughter cattle has increased the last several weeks. If you go back and look at that slaughter low that we saw a few weeks ago, that was about 35% below 2019 levels. At the same time, if you look at this past week and where slaughter was estimated, we're about 14% below 2019 levels. So that increase to me, although we're still below where we were last year, that's not surprising given we've had to slow line speeds down and stuff. So I'm actually pretty encouraged by how quickly slaughter has increased. And fed cattle prices have responded. This is a five market weighted average price for slaughter steers. I don't have this for the current week yet, but I was able to look at where it was on Friday. Looks like we're going to be in that 117 to 118 range. So I've dropped that in there, that blue line. If that's the case, and I think it will be, that's going to put us right about where we were last year. And I think that's significant. So slaughter's been increasing and fed cattle prices have responded. In terms of Kentucky prices, blue line there, I've been showing this every time. This is my 850 pound medium and large frame number 1-2 steer. He increased about almost $8 a hundredweight last week. That may be a little bit overstated for the overall market, but bottom line is he's quite a bit stronger. He's up in the low to mid 120s. Had a few value-added fancy type groups up there right around 130, 131, but mostly those groups have kind of been in the upper 120s. 550 pound ML number 1-2 steer, he moved into the 144 to 145 range last week. He increased just a little bit. But again, the fact that he's held his prices like he has after we've kind of moved through the initial grass placements to me is pretty significant. So feeders across the board are stronger. Last point I'll make in terms of our markets, I've been watching cull cows pretty closely, and you can make a case that cull cow markets, more ground beef driven, actually benefit from times like this when we're consuming more meat at home and when incomes might be a little bit strapped. Again, I'm using 80 to 85% boning cow as my baseline, and I use the average dress. And the point that I want to make here is that she broke above 60 cents a pound this past week. And that was the highest price that we had seen on that cull cow type going back to the end of March. And I think that's significant. It also made me go back and look. I want to see, okay, when was the last time that I had a average dress, 80 to 85% boning cow state average price above 60 cents? And I was surprised. I had to go back to 2017. So I just maintain this is a pretty good cull cow market. Let's not lose sight of that given everything that's going on. Last thing I'm going to do is just very quickly talk about the CFAT payments and the direct payment details that we have now that came out last week. So we now know that sign up will be through FSA, and sign up actually coincidentally begins today. So it's about 9 o'clock when I'm recording this. I'm sure our friends and partners at FSA are very busy already working through details and working with farmers right now. When the initial webinar was held, I guess 2 weeks ago, talked about a lot of the general FSA forms that need to be on file, and then there'll be an additional form now that you'll complete an initial application. That's the actual CFAT application. The best way I think to think about the direct payment to cattle producers is to think about 2 separate payments and 2 payment rates. The CARES payment, that portion of the direct payment, is per head and based on actual sales from January 15 to April 15, so that 90-day window. The CCC payment is based on any cattle that were unpriced, in other words, just in inventory but had not been sold or had not been priced, from April 16 to May 14. Okay, so separate those 2 payments. What USDA effectively did is they drew a line in the sand at April 15th, and that has brought about, I think, more question and more concern than anything is that April 15 deadline, because the 2 different payment rates are much different. So the CARES rate, again, is per head based on actual cattle sales, and it's much higher. So just kind of quickly walking you through these. So the top number here, this is for slaughter cattle, so fed cattle. Okay, so typically fed cattle out west, but if you're a Kentucky producer that finished system cattle, then you would qualify for that payment rate for any cattle that you sold in that 90-day period. The $92 rate is for slaughter cattle that are mature. So think about cull cows and cull bulls, for example. There's two different payment rates for feeders. There's a $102 payment rate for calves under 600 pounds and $139 for cattle or feeders above 600 pounds. And then the all other category is really written up in the actual final rule for anything that doesn't fit in the other categories. So I'm thinking about breeding stock, bred heifers, herd bulls. That would be my interpretation of how they're gonna handle that. Again, that's the CARES rate. That's per head for actual cattle that were sold between January 15 and April 15. The CCC rate, think about that more being on inventory. So you can use the highest inventory you had from that April 16 date to the May 14 date. So in other words, if you had sold a lot of cattle in early May, then you want to use an earlier date. But that one, the categorization doesn't matter as much because it's $33 across the board. So you would receive this on mature cows that you owned. If you're a spring calving operation, you're going to have it on those cows and the calves at their side. You know, if you're a winter backgrounder that for whatever reason held cattle past the April 15 date, then you're also going to receive this on those cattle as well. So this is the big difference to understand is you've got the CARES rate for actual sales between Jan 15 and April 15, and then beyond that, it's more of an inventory payment. It's a CCC rate. So that's why I say there really is a line in the sand there at that April 15 date. One more thing to be aware of, what I just showed you and what's been published is the full payment rate. What USDA has said they're going to do is they're going to pay 80% of that initially. And they're doing that so that they can ensure they have plenty of money to make the payments initially. And then assuming that funding is still available after sign up is over in August, then they'll come back and make additional payments up to that full rate. So just be aware that what I showed you and what you'll read online most likely is the full payment rate. Your initial payment will be 80% of that. Lastly, USDA has done a good job of putting information about this on a website, www.farmers.gov/CFAP. Announcements, forms, frequently asked questions, webinar, all of that is on there. And I would encourage you to take some time and look at that so you can have a better feel for some of the details that you may have that I didn't cover here in the last couple of minutes. As always, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you. I can be reached by phone or email, and then you're welcome to hit me up on Twitter. Wish you the very best. Have a good week.